Welcome back. Here's a 1600 mile review on the RadMini. Just finally cranked over 1600 miles just a couple days ago, and just wanted to give an update as far as how things have been, how the ecosystem has been as far as dealing with Rad himself and going through VeloFix for some warranty repairs. And here's where we're at. If you see me glancing down, I'll be looking at my computer just at my notes. So I've had a couple things repaired and replaced since getting the bike back in May. The first issue that I had come along was about in the month of August. I started noticing that I was getting a weird scratching noise from the bike as I was driving. Ended up being that I had about a third of the spokes end up breaking. And that was about either 10 or 12 spokes. So finally went back and forth with Rad, and then they did send me a new wheel due to the wheel starting to angle and bend on the axle itself. So they sent that wheel out pretty quick, wasn't too much going back and forth with them, and then I ended up getting the wheel just before Labor Day weekend, and I had VeloFix come back out like literally the first couple days after Labor Day weekend, so that happened pretty quick. When they came out, they did notice that the rear brakes on the bike were almost worn out. They weren't completely metal to metal, but at that point in time I only had maybe 600 miles or so on there, so I wouldn't anticipate them to be wearing out that quickly, but it is what it is. The brake pads weren't that expensive, so just had them put some new ones on. So they put that on, and within the first couple weeks started noticing that I was getting a bit of a grinding / rattling noise with the brand new wheel on it. So from my kind of being able to listen to it, it kind of sounded like it was coming from the hub itself. I talked to a couple of guys over at Rad, and they actually thought it was some sort of screw coming loose in the hub motor itself, but they weren't entirely sure. So they had me take a couple videos, sent it over. They still weren't quite sure, and they wanted me to check the fenders, the rack on the back, make sure everything was tight, which it was, and then they kind of ghosted me a little as far as what they wanted to do next. So it took a fair amount of follow-up to go back and forth with them. They did eventually say they wanted to have VeloFix come back out at my cost, just to verify the noise, which we did do. I waited at that point until early part or middle part of November, just because I just had them out there. Didn't really have any other issues with the bike at that point in time, and just wanted to kind of space out the cost since I had to pay for them to come back out there. So VeloFix did eventually come back out, took a look at the bike, verified the noise, and then we had to go back and forth with Rad again, with VeloFix at that point CC'd on the case and just seeing what they're able to do. So they asked them a fair amount of things, and then eventually they did agree to send me a new wheel. The wheel I did receive on the 31st of December, and then we had VeloFix come back out the following week after New Year's, and I've had the new wheel on since then. Another thing noted when they came out in November, sorry I forgot to mention this, is they noticed my chain had stretched. At that point the mileage was roughly 1,100 miles. And I thought it was a little peculiar for the chain to stretch that quickly, but yeah, it wasn't that big of a deal. I think they charged me $30 for a new chain. And just as a precautionary, just because I've gone about double the amount of mileage that I had when they came out in early September, I had them put a new set of brake pads on both front and rear. The fronts I did actually have go out on me shortly before they came over in November. And when the brake pads went out, they were completely worn out, and you have no stopping power at all, like zero stopping power. So you go and you pull the lever, even if you adjust the the tension screw, and it doesn't squeeze at all. So for a couple days I was riding around with just rear brakes. So at that point, that's when I got VeloFix back out as quickly as possible. So yeah, we're now almost at February. I just crossed 1,600 miles. I think I'm at like 1,640 right now. The bike's still going strong. I enjoy riding it every day. I do ride it rain or shine, so we haven't had much snow yet here in New York City, but I've had a couple days where I rode in a little bit of snow, just more or less enough to say you're riding it. It wasn't anything deep, maybe an inch or two at the absolute most. Got to watch for ice patches. I mean, that's really the biggest thing to worry about. The rear tire I've noticed in the middle, It's almost bald. I mean, there's a tiny little bit of knobbies left on the middle, but at 1,620, 30, 40 miles, whatever I'm at right now, in the middle of the tire, it's pretty bald. So I'm going to ride it through the rest of the winter time, and I have a set of the step through that came through the tires for that, so I'm going to put the slicks on coming for the summertime to ride it around. I'm curious to see how much quieter it'll be. From what I've heard, those actually quiet down the ride a fair amount and smooth it out a little bit. I'm also curious if I get a little more distance as far as with the range, so we'll find that out, but that'll be coming this summer. Still have the issue where my brake cables seem to come out of adjustment pretty frequently. I have to adjust them, I would say, once every roughly 2 weeks. I'm guessing it's cable slip, even though I've kind of put a mark on the cable just so I can see where it's moving, but it doesn't seem to move. The pads don't wear that quickly. I mean, I had the brake pads checked again when they came out right after the new year. Those were the ones that they replaced in November, and they said they were still at least 80% life left. So I'm guessing it's cable slip. I just haven't quite figured out exactly why that keeps happening, and it's a bit annoying, but you know, just once every 2 weeks you just have to adjust the cables. Other than that, you know, the shifters, all the other stuff has been good. The only other thing I've had an issue with is, as we have had some colder days, is my rear brake cable tends to freeze up or get seized up. I think water gets down into the casing of the cable. If you take a look at where the cable comes up to the caliper, the opening is actually looking up to the sky. So if you get any sort of water or debris in there, it'll start to gunk it up. When Velofix came out at the end, right in the beginning of January, I noted that they took it apart a little bit, put some lube, some sort of grease or whatever down in there. It's definitely helped. It doesn't bind up as much, but I was having an issue shortly before they were coming over there, where I was gone for a little bit for Christmas, and the first time I got the bike back, once I got back into the city, I went to pull on the brake for the rear, and the cable was just completely seized up. You know, I pulled on it a couple times rapidly. It did break free, and then it kind of worked, but it was just a little grindy. So besides the cable issue, everything else has for the most part kind of been maintenance stuff. I think little things wearing out here and there and adjustments here and there. But that's about it. Planning on still keeping the bike into the springtime, and then kind of figure out if I'm going to get something a little nicer. I kind of talked about that first when on my initial review. You know, the bike is definitely entry level. A lot of the components leave a little bit to be desired as far as performance goes, but it works pretty well, and as far as for the specs on the bike, it is still pretty reasonable for the price that it is. So I will keep you guys in the loop and see how it keeps going from here. Talk to you soon.